Hi, it's Cara Riley, and welcome to the Landscape Photography Show, episode number 14. And we are delighted to start our series of night photography tips and tricks. And it will be delightful because our first guest will be Jeff Sullivan. And so we're going to introduce our curators that come from the Landscape Photography theme page. And we appreciate each and every one of you and all of your posts. And we'll introduce the first. We'll start with Kevin Rowe, and he'll tell you what he does.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Rowe. I am one of the curators for the Landscape Photography theme. I'm also the owner on Google Plus of the Utah Photographers page, and that page is for photographers in Utah or just people visiting and posting pictures of Utah. And it's great to be here. Looking forward to Jeff's presentation here.
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to hear what you do. And I'm Cara Riley. I started a web page that's called Photo Tour Global Directory. I'm one of the curators on the landscape photography theme. And just so you know, we have some gremlins, and our master, Margaret Tompkins, is not with us tonight. She may be popping in, but that's what's going on. We never have a show without some gremlins. So here we go. Now we're going to go to Phoenix, and we'll talk to Jim Worthman, and he will introduce our very special guest.
Thanks, Cara. And before I start, I got to wish happy birthday to Kevin, as well as Brynis Baker.
Whoa! Happy birthday!
So, yeah, I'm an amateur enthusiast photographer. I like doing mostly landscapes, and I enjoy both color and black and white. Based in Phoenix, and I'm a curator in the landscape photography theme and a moderator in the landscape photography community. So enough of me. I'm happy to say tonight you're in for a real treat. I'm going to introduce Jeff Sullivan. We're privileged to have him tonight as our guest. Jeff is a professional landscape and nature photographer based in Gardnerville, Nevada. And Jeff, jump in if I get anything wrong here. But right in his backyard are the Eastern Sierras, and I will say Jeff is prolific both as a photographer and an author. So here are just some highlights. He conducts a variety of workshops in night photography, as well as workshops in Yosemite, Death Valley, and other places like Bodie in the Eastern Sierras. He's an accomplished author for publications like National Geographic, Outdoor Photographer, and he's working on a guide to the best landscape locations in Southern California, a photography guide. And there's just so much more, so you can check out our show notes for links to Jeff's blog and websites, and certainly follow him on Google+. Back to tonight's theme, night photography. I should mention that in 2011, Jeff was named Astronomy Photographer of the Year by the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, London. So it's quite a resume, and we're excited to hear Jeff. So with that, take it away.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the introduction. So let's see where to start. How about a sample? Would that sound good to you guys?
That's great.
Let's see if I can figure out how to do that. I'll try a YouTube link here. I had it on the screen. There we go.
I'm not sure if the YouTube will screen share, but...
It worked pretty well when we were warming up here, so let's see if I can pull that off. And I have to do a screen share, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Let's do screen share. Gotta find the right one. No, maybe I don't. Maybe I just have to.
It's always fun. Don't worry. We're used to little gremlins that come in and And they steal the show. Sometimes they've stolen the show for 30 minutes. We had a delay one, so.
They're the pet gremlins.
Yes, the pet. We should name them. I was interested. We'll just chat while you work. Don't pay attention to us. But this will give the viewers something to talk about. On the night photography, I noticed that Jeff, he's not too far. I think Nevada's not that far from from Arizona, but some wonderful opportunities with the night photography workshops. And Jim, you've done some incredible stuff with the comets. Tell us a little bit about the comets that you.
Yeah, so,
while we're waiting for Jeff, we'll come back to you, Jeff. When we're going to hear about Jim's comet photos, because it was so fun to watch you create and develop those shots.
Actually, I think maybe I'm saved by.
There he is.
Oh.
Yep, you're up.
Okay.
Let's just see if I can get the right window here. I think this one will work best. Here we go.
Oh, yay.
Yep.
Woo, look at there. We're loving that.
And now we're seeing the joys of my Eastern Sierra internet connection. It says it's playing, but it's caching. Okay, now we need a little sound.
That's gorgeous.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll probably need to get out of HD mode since I'm also running the video conference at the same time here. I hadn't thought about that.
And just so you know, if you actually disappear and get disconnected, just click back in. You have 10 minutes to come back in.
Okay, sounds good.
Because it happens to all of us. Sometimes we disappear and we have to pop back in.
So if you can make out the flashes on the screen, that's the Perseid meteor shower, which happens in early August. And it turns out that meteor photography is just an extension of regular night photography. And if you set up your exposure for the Milky Way and you have dark skies, you'll pick up the flashes of the meteors at the same time.
Very cool.
Nice. How long were these exposures typically, Jeff?
Well, a dark sky exposure with no moonlight for me is typically on my Canon 5D Mark II and 5D Mark III runs about 30 seconds at f2.8 at ISO 6400.
Ah, okay.
And that's kind of pushing the limits of the cameras a little bit.
Yep.
But you want 30 seconds, and that's with a 16 millimeter or 14 millimeter ultra wide lens. And the reason you need 30 seconds is you don't want the stars to start streaking and making star trails.
Yeah. Do you find that on a longer lens, the allowable exposure time changes?
Yes. When you have a longer focal length, you would need to do a much shorter time. So you could easily get down to 15:10 or even 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I do try sometimes to use, say, my 70 to 200 millimeter lens at night. But first of all, it's f4, so that cuts out a stop. And then also the time, if I do a 30-second exposure, you immediately start to get star drag. So you definitely are fighting with all those trade-offs when you're shooting at night. So the nice thing is, though, when you're shooting with 30-second exposures, you can either do star trails by merging all your exposures together, or you can do a time-lapse movie like this. And on this particular one, the moon is up and you're not seeing a lot of meteors. This is during the Geminid meteor shower in December. And then the moon sets, and I had to be standing there right by the camera to slowly change all the exposure parameters to get back to my dark sky exposure for after the moon set. So that would be right about now. And now you'll see the meteors just kind of going crazy. I apologize that this had to be at 480 resolution for this Hangout since my internet connection isn't all that fast. But you can see a high-res 720p HD copy on my YouTube stream.
Yeah, and we can put that link in the show notes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, and I tried. That's why the way I was trying to show it at first was through the Hangout so that it would be able to do that. But I didn't quite. I'm doing it through a separate YouTube window now, so I probably am using more bandwidth than I needed to.
Well, actually,
This particular clip,
I think there is an issue that you can't screen share a YouTube. It literally
okay.
had that in other Hangouts.
Hmm.
When it's in the Hangout,
Yeah, so basically,
you're doing it right because it's not in the Hangout.
So basically, when I picked up my 5D Mark II in early 2009 and realized that I could shoot under any night condition, including no moon whatsoever, I kind of went crazy on night shooting and started with some meteor showers and never looked back. I try to shoot every meteor shower of the year that isn't rainy or completely blown out by the moon. And then lately I've started adding, well, I also was doing full moon, rise at sunset, like this one just was, and then full moon set at sunrise. Crescent moons are similar where you can catch them at sunrise and sunset. Also comets, Comet Pan-STARRS was good earlier this year. And I'm dying to see Comet ISON. That's going to be great.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, if it doesn't break up. If it does, though, then we might have 10 pieces of comet rounding the sun. That could be pretty good, too.
Do you find much difference in low light performance between your 5D Mark II and your Mark III?
I do, and the 5D Mark II obviously is noisier. They have about the same resolution, not exactly, but close enough.
Right.
The big difference is that there's a lot less noise with the 5D Mark III. In Lightroom, when I'm using the 5D Mark II in good conditions, and for the sensor that means cold conditions, you have less noise when your sensor doesn't overheat. I can do maybe a noise reduction setting of, say, 20 to 25 in Lightroom. Get out of this. Let's see how I get myself back. There we go. In Lightroom, I can do a setting of maybe 20 to 25 on the noise reduction with the 5D Mark II. If it's a little warmer, like I go to Death Valley and it's 80 degrees when the sun sets, I'm going to get a lot more noise. And if it's really dark and I'm really pushing the shadows, I might need a setting of anywhere up to 40 or 50 or sometimes even 60 on the Lightroom noise reduction setting. Comparing that to the 5D Mark III, I usually can get away with about 15 on a normal night. If it gets really hot, I might need 25 or maximum about 30. So, you know, it's to the point where the 5D Mark III, you almost don't need noise reduction at all until you get it up to, you know, about ISO 6400. And it's still pretty bad at 12800, for example, or 25.6, but you just crank up the noise reduction and it's usable for video. I wouldn't try to do a big print at those settings, but when you go to video, you're cutting down about you know 9 out of every 10 pixels, so you're in pretty good shape. Still have a lot of data. So let's see. Let's get started with something here. I think I might try what you're never supposed to do and actually process a file for the first time here live on the show. I guess I'm just a masochist that way.
We love it when we're the first.
Oh, and I've got the wrong Lightroom up. That's one way to really mess myself up. I'm doing a beta of Lightroom 5, which I guess now commits me to it because I've been using it for close to a month, and that means I have probably 2 or 250 gigs of data in it already.
Wow.
And I have 1 day left on my trial, so we're just getting into the wire here.
I have the 5. It's good.
So far, it seems pretty good.
Yeah.
It might have a couple of the same bugs I had in 4, but I'm sure they'll fix it soon. Or come out with a new one that I can then try. Okay, let's see. Let me find the right, do one of the Bodhi sessions.
So
Oh,
Kevin,
and
what's your favorite feature on Lightroom 5 then?
Um, the I can't think of what it is actually. There was a couple things that changed from 4 to 5 that I really like, and I can't think what they are.
Well, we had a training class on it, and I think my favorite is the fact you could spotlight the light. You can just, to have some light come in like a spotlight. I think that
Yeah, it
was,
really is. It's come a lot more.
yeah,
Or it used to have to go into Photoshop more, but now you have the graduated spot healing and brushes that you can adjust and things like that. So
yeah. That spot healing where it just recreates the same texture. That's very nice too.
yeah, and that used to be just a Photoshop thing.
Yes. Yeah, those were two that were real biggies for 5 for me.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really enjoying the perspective correction, and someone told me that was
Yeah.
in 4, but I didn't find it if it was there. I just found it with 5, and I'm really liking that.
Oh, well,
So
there was in 4, but there wasn't the new, like you can just click on vertical or
And
mhm,
it'll
vertical
fix
and it
it.
automatically does it in 5. Yeah, I just used that
Yeah.
yesterday. It works really well.
mhm.
So we're just filling space here, Jeff.
Yeah, my catalog's a little slow. I only have 185,000 images, so and that's only Lightroom 4 and then a few weeks on 5. I kind of ditched my Lightroom 1, 2, 3 catalogs because they were just dragging along too many photos. So, okay, I've got the album up here.
That's probably a good thing to point out if you want to do time lapse and star trails. You need a lot of storage space because it's a
You
ton
do,
of
and it's a
photos.
good idea. I think if I were next time I start a Lightroom catalog, I'm going to do the time lapses separately because they really chew through a lot of space.
Hmm.
They're probably clogging up my catalog more than I need to. So I'm going to start with a Star Trails photo, and we shot in front of the Bodhi Church. Let me go ahead and give you something to look at so you can see what I'm looking at. Let's see, is that, yeah, here we go, Lightroom. So we like to, everybody wants to shoot the church and people want to do star trails at it. Uh, so we always set up there and use that as one of our first star trail shots for people. And for some reason, I'm going to find that shot. Sucker is slow.
Now, where is this, Jeff? This church
This is at
located?
Buddy State Historic Park. It's about 45 miles from my house in the Eastern Sierra. I live right at the north end of Mono County. Technically, I am in Nevada, but we're the second lot into Nevada, so we can throw a stone and hit California.
Okay.
And let's see. It's
You got
slowly
that great
refreshing.
tax break in Nevada.
Yeah, the casinos are very nice to be paying a lot of our taxes for us. I really appreciate that. I need to get a new machine, I think. This thing is just a little too slow. So I see a sequence of photos here. So basically what we do is we edit one, and then you copy those settings to another photo. So I'll start with this photo here.
Hi, there's maybe Margaret's jumping in here.
So let's see, this photo was taken on a 14 millimeter lens, 30 seconds at f2.8, ISO 6400. It was after the moon had set. And there's maybe a tiny bit of light from a building nearby, but it's mostly lit by the Milky Way, actually.
Very nice.
And you can see how well the camera does. Now I'll zoom in so you can see the noise. This is on, let's see what. So there's a little bit of noise in the shadows here. I'll get this out of way. The camera. This is on
Welcome,
the...
Margaret.
Hi.
Made it.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi there, everybody. Sorry about the glitches here tonight.
Gremlins, pet gremlins.
Jim and I thought we should name them.
Jeff, how long of an exposure is that?
This is 30 seconds. That's my standard night exposure. With a sequence of 30-second exposures, I can do both star trails and a time-lapse movie from the same set of exposures.
Okay.
So I really like that flexibility to do whatever I want with them. Or I can do a still photo with just without the dragging of a longer exposure. Now, if you had a crop sensor camera, those tend to be a couple of stops less sensitive or have more noise for the same megapixels. So you might want to extend that to a 60-second or 2-minute or even 4-minute exposure. Often you need about 4 times for the sensor, but then often, or typically, crop sensor cameras don't have access to wide-angle f2.8 lenses. Most of them seem to be about f3.5 or f4, so that's going to be another stop of light. So instead of going from 30 seconds to 60 to 2 minutes, you're going to need to go another factor or 2 out to 4 minutes. So that's a bummer, but you can still do star trails.
So Jeff, quick question: when you're
Yes.
when you're setting it up for 30-second exposures, are you having the camera pause in between the next exposure at all, or is it just constant?
What I do is I'll set it up on an external intervalometer, so I can go have a cup of coffee, read a book, or work a second camera in a different direction. So I'll set the intervalometer to just take a picture every 1 second. And then I'll use, since I'm using 30-second exposures, I can have the camera time the 30-second exposure. So that way, when the exposure is done, the intervalometer counts 1 second from the last time it reached 1, so it's going to be a second or less when the intervalometer tells the camera to go again.
So you don't find any need to pause, let your sensor cool down in between shots?
Oh, I give it a full second to rest.
Yeah. Jeff, related question. Do you use the long exposure noise reduction that Canon offers? I don't know. Nikon probably has something similar where after a long exposure, and I think it's anything greater than 1 second, it'll take a dark frame of equal length, and then in camera it'll subtract them to get rid of hot pixels.
Right. I don't do that because you can't afford to have a 30-second gap in between your pictures.
Gotcha.
And what you can do is the sensor will heat up a certain amount while you're shooting the shot. You can do a dark frame at the end, and it should be roughly the same temperature. Because if you're shooting a star trail shot, it's going to probably be 30 minutes, maybe 40, maybe more, minimum of probably 20. So by then, your camera has reached a certain stable state relative to the outside temperature. And so a dark frame or 2 at the end should be more than enough to subtract out from your other ones to get rid of most of the hot pixels.
Okay.
But the nice thing is, and I'm a little bit spoiled here, I live at 5,000 feet, Bodie's up at 8375, Mono Lake's at about 7,000, the Mammoth area is at about 8, Tauga Pass is up at 9,800. These are all fairly cool places, and when I'm doing night photography, it's the coolest time of day, probably anywhere from 50s on down to 30s or 20s. So my tend to get very hot, and I usually don't even bother to do dark frames, because if I have any hot pixels, it's going to be maybe a dozen or 2 at most on my 5D Mark II, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 at all on my 5D Mark III. And usually just a little bit of noise reduction tends to catch those anyway. So
yeah.
At least the very small single pixel ones, by the time you do, and this is night photography too, so I'm always doing a pretty healthy, maybe 10 or 15 on my 5D Mark III on the Lightroom noise reduction scale. And up at around 15, by the time I look at the image, that's one of the first things I do is the noise reduction. By the time I look at it, I don't see any hot pixels. So let's zoom in here. In fact, this is the file we're looking at, and I'm not seeing any hot pixels at all on my 5D Mark III. And this was a pretty warm night for here. I think I was walking around in a t-shirt and shorts all night until about 11:30. Then I put a light jacket on. So it was maybe 60s to 50s when I took this. So one of the first things I'll do is a little bit of noise reduction in the develop module of Lightroom. Go down a little bit, and I'll just do a guesstimate, my typical 15 or so. It's at 14. That's close enough. And then I'll do some lens corrections. I'll let it do the bacon for the lens. That does a little bit of peripheral illumination correction in the corners. Now with Lightroom, it seems to overcorrect a little bit for Canon, especially at night. You get a little bit of purple noise in the corners where it's tried to lighten them up. So I go back into vignetting right after it's done the automatic one, and I drop it back down until some of that purple goes away.
Interesting.
It's a little bit annoying, but it's no big deal. So then I'm going to zoom in the corners here too. I can see I have a little bit of chromatic aberration. It's usually not very much, but on these brightest stars, I am getting a little bit of purple fringing. So the next one right next to the automatic profile lens correction is color. And I'll turn on the checkbox that says remove chromatic aberration. And it's not doing it, just checking it, because the amount is set to 0, so I have to move that up just a little bit. And I'll do that to 3 or 4. Usually somewhere between 3 and 5 is enough for these lenses that I'm using.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Let's see. And then I can go one little tab further to the manual one and correct the vertical perspective distortion. And that would do something like that. But I'm not sure that it was real. It didn't seem real noticeable to me. I mean, I'm so used to looking at wide-angle shots, I guess, that, that it didn't particularly bother me. So I'll just do a tiny bit of it, but not fully correct it.
You're using a wide-angle lens on this, a 2.8 or?
Yeah, this is it has both it's a fast lens at f2.8, and it's an ultra wide lens at 14 millimeters.
14.
And it's not a fisheye. It's a rectilinear 14 millimeter lens, which is really, really wide. Because I really wanted to get a lot of the sky in. So I'm actually going to drop the exposure down a tiny bit. That'll make the sky darker. And I'm going to give it a little, well, I want to give it contrast, but if I do that, that'll make the shadows go more black. So instead of doing contrast, which would both lighten the light areas and darken the shadows, I'm going to just increase the light areas with highlights. Tiny bit on that, tiny bit on the whites. Now the Milky Way is showing up a little bit better. And I think I'm just about done. Maybe I'll do a tiny bit of clarity, that very, very little bit of vibrance to bring out a little bit of color in the wood. Be good. Maybe a tiny bit of lights in the curves too. That'll bring out that Milky Way a little bit. It's all just very, very minor adjustments. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a crop on this in case we want to do a time-lapse movie with it. So in Lightroom, you just hit R, and that brings me to the crop and straighten. And I'm going to crop it to a 16:9 shape because that's the shape of an HD TV. So we can do HD video.
Oh.
And just going to get it where I want it, make sure it fits right about there. And now I'm going to actually go back to just darken those corners a tiny bit more. That purple bugs me. So that's here, profile correction, vignetting, go just a little bit down. Okay, so now I'll go back to I guess they call it a film strip at the bottom, and I have my one edited file. I'm going to mark that with, just hit a 5, and that's going to give it 5 stars, so I'll be able to come back to that easy later. And I will go to develop settings and then copy, And that will copy, I'll just tell it to copy everything, including the crop. And then I will move forward in my sequence here. I don't know how many I have, and I have some light painted ones at the end. I have 47 selected photos. So then I'll just paste, develop, paste, and it should edit all those photos for me.
That's awesome just in itself.
Yeah, so I probably spent 5 minutes yapping on about the one photo. I mean, I could have. I mean, those are all the standard things that I do every time. So I can do that in about, if I don't have to talk about it, I can do it in about 20 or 30 seconds. Then the paste takes about another 5 seconds, and then I'm basically done. So I have these last photos here where I did increasing levels of light painting, and that way I can have the building lit up in the picture, and I can either include these, and that's where the 30 seconds is great, because I can either include 1, 2, or all 3 of these in the final result, and I can try them in and out of the picture to make sure that I have the best one in there. So I had lightened up the previous ones to lighten the sky up. I'm going to take some of that back out. And I'm going to make this one go a little tiny bit darker. So the last star on the end might be a tiny bit dark, but I really want to optimize the lighting on the building here.
What are you using to light up the building?
Just a flashlight.
Okay.
And the way I control the intensity is the time that I illuminate it. So I shine it at the building and I move it back and forth. And if I do it for 3 seconds, that's a certain brightness. And if I do it for 6 seconds, that's more bright. And if I do it for the entire time or 20 seconds, that's brightest. So I think these are all pretty good. I think what I'll do now is just save the files. Let's see, export. And I like to put them in a Star Trails folder, and I make a separate subfolder for each time I do a Star Trails image. So where's my Star Trails folder? Here we go. And I save them in JPEG. And one of the cool things about doing Star Trails, let me do this while I'm not talking, because then I'll be less likely to mess it up. So I'm trying to remember, I think this was on June 29th, so I'll just call the folder the name of the day, 13, July 29th, Bodie Church, and I'll go ahead and leave the quality at 100 so I don't really change the files much. I'm not going to resize them. I'll do full size, do 300 dots per inch. Not going to do any sharpening because that will make the stars, I want any softness on the stars to make them merge together when they're doing the star trails. So I don't do any sharpening at this point. And I don't need a watermark, and then I just hit export. So this is where I need a new computer. This is an i7, but it's only a laptop, so it's a little bit on the slow. So I guess what I'll do for maybe a minute or two while this is saving the files is take you on a quick tour of some of the other shots we got that night, right? As long as that doesn't slow down my save too much. And now it just lost the file. Yeah, it's thinking too hard.
Jeff, I have some good news for you, Jeff.
Yes.
You have a raving fan on the page, on the Landscape Photography Show page, Norma Shaker, and she's been following your work, and she was so excited to see you on the show tonight. And we also have Sheila Du Bois and Michael Shaneblum, who've been making some comments. So just want you to know you've got some fans here.
I thought you were going to talk about me as being the raving fan.
Oh, well, Margaret, we're all raving fans. We're all in awe. We're thrilled.
You all don't want to know the words I was saying to my computer when I was trying to get on.
Well, it was those nice ones that worked and got you on.
I'm afraid it got to me. I was not using nice words.
So that's a nice shot.
Looks like you got a flashlight inside.
Uh-oh.
Oh, so maybe gremlins got him and you're stuck.
Oh, I hope it's not contagious.
Well, it clearly is. I think that they've moved from you to Jeff. Do you want me to do some filler?
Yeah, if you want to talk about flashlights and lighting things up and
Well, I'll
comments.
show, because you asked, so
Yes.
while we're waiting, I can do a screen share and show some photos. And then as soon as oops.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay, are you seeing this?
Yes, stars at Sentinel Mesa.
Yeah. So Kara suggested I show some of my night photography, and so here's one from Monument Valley, and I don't know how well it's coming through on G+, but on the Hangout, but there are actually stars there. This was shot early one morning in probably nautical twilight.
Now, whereabouts is that? I don't recognize that, Jim.
Oh, that's pretty shot from the old campground, right up on the rim near the visitor center, near the. And here's another. It almost qualifies as night photography. Just a thin crescent moon, shot in Phoenix, actually. A recent shot of the supermoon.
Now, that was in the Superstition Mountains. Is that where you went?
Yep. Superstition Mountains, east of Phoenix.
That's an awesome photograph. I just love that.
Thank you. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about pan stars. So I have a few that I shot south of Phoenix, kind of out in the desert, away from the city lights, and managed to get okay foregrounds for comet photography.
Great moon up there too.
What's that?
That's a great moon up there too.
Ah, thanks. Yeah.
Turned out good.
That's awesome.
And I don't remember offhand, but there are actually in some of these. Well, maybe it's not. I'll take that back. I've got some, and I don't think I put them up here in this list that show Jupiter, and you can actually pick out some of Jupiter's moons.
Oh,
now,
cool.
How long of an exposure is this, Jim?
2 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, and I showed the photo details on the right, and again, I don't know if that's readable or not. This was, interestingly, this is a 400mm shot. And pan stars wasn't something you want to shoot wide angle. And this one was 4 seconds, and with the 4-second exposure, f5.6, I was able to actually get some detail on the surface of the moon. I mean, and looking at it naked eye, all you could see is a real thin crescent moon. You couldn't really see any surface detail, but longer exposure kind of revealed that. And then, last but not least, and Kevin, then you're up next, is a Milky Way shot taken from up in the mountains east of Phoenix, and this is up near the town of Superior. But it's a fairly dark site. The sky glow on the horizon, I believe, was the little town of Florence. But anyway, that's my one decent Milky Way shot. Got to do more of those.
That's really good.
Thanks. It's awesome.
It's really good.
So just a note here from the viewers. Michael Shaneblum he's ecstatic. He's saying once again, a great show. I'm obsessed with night photography. So I told him that we were going to be doing a series. So that I think this will be something that our viewers really would like to know about, is how you do it, how to set it up, what your camera settings are. And so Jim, if you would have a just let's say a real nugget on what would be the first thing if someone was just new to night photography that they should think about with their settings and their camera?
Don't try hand holding.
Okay, excellent.
You really, but seriously, you want a real stable tripod for these long exposures. As far as settings, and Jeff was saying some of the same things. You want to limit the length of the exposure if you're using any kind of a long lens, because otherwise what you want to be pinpoints of light in the stars turn out to be little streaks. Now if you're shooting wide angle, a 30-second exposure is fine, but if you're shooting anything with like a short telephoto or a long telephoto, then even 2 seconds might be about the limit before you start seeing streaks.
I wanted to point out one thing is a lot of people that are beginning are on crop sensor cameras. I'm on a crop sensor camera on my Sony NEX. There is, for the Canon and Nikon, there's a great lens for night photography. It's and I don't know how you say the brand, Tokina, whatever it is. It's the 11 to 16 2.8, and that's a great 2.8 millimeter lens for night photography. So that's something to maybe look at.
Is that a real expensive lens, Kevin?
It's not. It's priced below. It's not a Canon or Nikon brand, so it's not. I can't remember the price for sure, but it's reasonably priced.
Okay.
Do you want me to show a couple things, or?
Sure, and I have another question. This is exciting. Howard Hoffman, so glad to see you on there, and he's asking, how can I find where and when to find the Milky Way? Now, I'll let Jim, you probably have the answer to that.
Yeah, so...
and then we'll get back to you, Kevin.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have a smartphone or a tablet. There are a lot of astronomy apps available, and I'm sure you can find the same kind of information on the web, but I recommend, though, an astronomy app, and that'll show you typically the current sky, and then usually they'll let you go backward and forward in time, and it'll show you the direction you need to be looking. And I will say, I recommend combining that with TPE. So once you know about what direction the Milky Way is going to be rising in the sky, then you can use TPE and look at that azimuth and look at the landscape around where you're going to be shooting. So if you want to position a mountain peak at the right spot, TPE will help you do that.
Now tell us what TPE is, Jim.
The photographer's ephemeris, and
yep. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say I know the answer to that.
Yeah, and we talked about that during one of the early landscape photography shows. But yeah, and I can never remember the name of the specific.
Well, we will put that in the show review notes.
Okay,
so
good.
Howard, we'll get that for you there. And so Kevin, did you have a few things on night photography that you wanted to share?
I can share a few things. It's something that I've practiced a lot, but I've never been able to get to a good location to get anything great. So I'll show you, and I hope that we get Jeff back, and if we don't get him back tonight, I hope he'll come back, because he was really just starting to get into the oh,
Yay,
well, we might be getting him back right now.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
There, Jeff?
Welcome back.
Wonderful.
Great.
No audio yet, though.
You're muted, because you just came back in. So just unmute your microphone.
That
There you
There
are.
you go.
okay.
There, we can hear
I will
you.
turn. Lori had tried to get on the internet, which divided my bandwidth in half. And then my machine went crazy, and Google Talk crashed, and a bunch of other things. So I also killed Lightroom to make sure that wasn't slowing things down. So I do have a few photos saved in Lightroom. So I will, we can call those up. Oh, actually, what I'll do is bring up the StarStax app. So let me go find that. Hopefully that won't bring my machine back to its knees. So I will do a screen share of that when it comes up. Here we go. Okay, do we have that on the screen? Here we go.
Yes.
Yep.
So this is a free application. It's a star stacking app, and it has a number of different modes, but the one you commonly use it in for star trails is called Lighten mode. And basically it will compare all your pictures, or it will try to add one and then the next one, then the next one, and it will take the brightest pixels. So if the brightest pixel it has so far from the previous photos isn't as bright as the new pixel that comes in on the next photo, it then adds that brighter pixel there. So the stars will slowly ascribe their relative motion to our viewing position as it adds more and more pictures to the stack. So I will go to the files that I saved, say File Open Images. It should bring up a dialog box here to do that. And we'll go to my Star Trails folder, which is here. And then we have the Bodhi Church. It didn't save all of them, but it's pretty close. So I will highlight all of these photos. Well, it was maybe halfway. So I will put it in Lighten mode over here on the right column, right side. And then we just hit, we can either do Edit, Start Processing, or there's the icon, the fourth one from the left here on the top. And we can just click that. So it's adding, it's 5, 6 pictures in, 7, 8. You can start to see where the North Star is near the steeple. You can start to see the stars that were moving the most off on the side starting to make trails.
Nice.
Oh, this is
So
incredible.
it's third to last, second to last, last one.
I haven't never heard of
So
this.
that's the general idea. Now, it didn't finish enough of the photos to get them all, but I'll zoom in here and you can kind of see the gist of it. And there are a few hot pixels in there, but for the most part, it's pretty good.
You've posted this one
now I
on
save it.
Google, haven't
And the
you?
way I name it is I'll name it
Yes, Margaret. Yes.
the first file name and then dash whatever changes to get to the last file name. So it's 8022-42 for me. The way I'll name this. Dash 42. And it's saved. And now we'll go back to Lightroom. Let me change what I'm sharing here. Go to Lightroom. And in the library mode of Lightroom, we hover over the folder that we were working in, and we just do right mouse click, go down to Synchronize Folder. It will find that new file. Or not. When Wonder if I'm in the wrong folder here. Should be where, oh, I saved it off in that Star Trails one. Okay. I will have to save it there. File, save as. Okay, Star Trails folder. No, wait a minute. I want to go back to the one I had it in before. Okay, there we go. The original folder. Okay, now Lightroom should see it. Try again with the synchronize. Okay, then I hit synchronize. It's thinking. Here we go. Give it a few keywords.
One of your raving fans is very excited, Norma Shekar, watching how the whole process unfolds in Lightroom. So this is great.
Now, if it had gotten all the way to the end and finished the stacking, it would have the ones with the lit building in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
But I think
yes.
my poor little laptop was having too much trouble doing the video conference and Lightroom and a few other things at once, so I don't think I'll put it through that again. But if you like, I can show you real quickly how we could turn these into a time-lapse movie. I think
Yes.
Do we still have time for that?
Okay.
Actually, I'm not having any sound. Oh, I had turned my speakers off because I had some little Facebook things making noise. So would you like me to try a time-lapse with this? Okay, good.
Yes.
So let me bring that program up. I will close the Star Stacking app. So that was StarStax, S-T-A-R-S-T-A-X. This next one is Virtual Dub, Virtual D-U-B. It's also a free app. Let me put it on the screen for you. Screen share. Come on. There we go. So this is the Virtual Dub app, and it's a pretty simple app. At least what I use of it is very simple. I just open the file, and we'll go straight to those same star stacked, the photos that we were using for the Star Trails. So we'll go to my Star Trails folder.
We have a question from Norma.
Yes.
She's asking, was the photo taken when the Milky Way was present?
Yes, it was, and you can see the Milky Way in the background, but it's the part that's not towards the center of the Milky Way, so it's very faint. So
okay, great.
I can point that out when I get back to a single one of those photos in a little while. Let me go ahead and read in the Star Trail image. Okay, what did I call it? Was it in 729 Bodhi Church? Okay, so I just basically select the first photo in the sequence, then I go to the bottom of the input screen, and this is the tricky thing. If you just hit open now, it would just open one file. You have to know to change the file type. Even though it will read in a JPEG, it doesn't look for an image sequence. You have to go to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th item down in the menu and say image sequence, and now just by selecting that first file, when I hit open, it will find them all. Now I don't have a lot of files here, it's only 20, but you'll get the general idea. So I'm just going to change the view with the right mouse click to be 33% so you can see the whole thing, and then I go over to the fourth tab where it says video. I'm going to leave it at the default frame rate of 10 frames per second, but if you wanted to do European PAL, you could do 25. US NTSC would be 24. For online digital video, people often use 30. Sometimes if you want to be compatible with a digital camera, for some reason They seem to use 29.97. So I'm going to leave it at the default of 10 because then we'll have 2 seconds of video. In fact, maybe I'll just go to 5 so we get 4 seconds so we can see it play out a little bit. And then now all I do is say File, Save as AVI, and let me get it in the right folder here. $7.29. Oh, that's right. It was over in the Star Trails one. I was looking in time lapse. So I save it as an AVI. Now that's a very, oh, you know, it's going to do the, I'm going to cancel it. Sorry. There's one more thing I have to do. I did not scale these down to be HD TV resolution, so that's why it was taking so long. They're very high resolution. They're excessively high. So I'm going to go back to that video function, go to filters, add one, and I could rescale it. Resize. And I think I can do an absolute here of 720p. Well, it's not wanting to scale it exactly. It's close enough. I think that'll work. So yeah, it'll scale it to about 720p high definition. So now I'll do the Save as AVI. Just calling it video. And it goes through each frame. You can see it go through it, and you can see it moving. Oh, and there's the Milky Way off on the right side. You can see a stripe coming from the church up into the sky, but it's looking out of the Milky Way. We're in one of the arms. It's looking out past all that, so there aren't as many stars looking out that way, so the Milky Way isn't as bright. Okay, so that's done. Let's see if I can find that quickly. Go to my Star Trail folder, go to church, here's the video. Oh, and I guess I need to share that with you now. I'm watching it. Doesn't it look great? I didn't share the whole screen. Let me move that over for you. Here we go, Windows Media Player. Oh, I know sometimes it has trouble following videos. This may not be very good for you. Let me try a full screen share, see if it shows up better.
I think we've had trouble with some of the full screen shares, haven't we?
Yeah, that's looking really funky.
Yeah.
It nests inside of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely gets weird.
Trying to think what else I could show it in. Well, you saw the video at the beginning. You can see that they work. So basically, the AVI is a very high-resolution format. If you wanted a MP4 for compact use online for faster upload speeds, and so people can actually see them better, I use another program called MPEG Streamclip, and that will another free program that will allow me to down convert it from high-quality, high-resolution AVI format to MP4. So what I'll often do is start out with a high-resolution HD copy in AVI, so I'll do it to 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080 resolution. And then when I go to MP4 at MPEG Streamclip, I'll downsize it to 720p, which is 1280 by 720. So, but you've got you saw how easy that was. There are one or two things to set. The main thing is you got to make sure that the virtual dub software sees it. You use that image sequence, and then you just, I had to tell it what resolution I wanted and then save it. But usually I downsize the files when I'm saving it out of Lightroom to more of an HD resolution. So that makes it pretty straightforward. That's why I forgot to do the resize. I don't usually have to do that. So let's see, we did Star Trails. That same setting for Dark Skies works for Milky Way. The 30 seconds, f2.8, ISO 6400. Light painting is basically just what I was doing on the church there. Let me bring up a different example of that. You can shine light on something, or you can have the light itself be what you're taking a picture of, do the light orbs and so forth. Let's see, what would be the best way to do that? Let's bring up a folder with those. So let's try this. So I'm just going back through some photos here. So with this one, I guess I need to, hold on, gonna need to change my screen share again. This one will fit better. It's weird, I have a Sony laptop, and it came with an application to view videos and images and to play music, but when I and all my files default to that, but when I click on them, none of them have ever actually played.
Oh.
So it's frustrating. The app takes away from what I'm actually trying to do, but never actually does what it wanted to do. Okay,
so you have your own supply of gremlins.
Exactly, yes. We're well supplied here in the Eastern Sierra with gremlins. So this is what people call a light orb. It's basically a light on a string that I swing around in a circle. And then if you slowly turn yourself in a circle while you're swinging a circle, you make a sphere. And if you look near the bottom of that orb, you can see a little rock in the sand. I used that as a mark that I tried to swing the circle over. And you can see, if you look at the top of the orb, it looks like there are two tops. So I had, I think, two exposures where I did two orbs, or did it twice. And they lined up pretty well with themselves, but they didn't line up very well with each other. But they're lined up at the rock at the bottom because I use that as my marker on the bottom each time. So you get the general idea of it.
Neat.
That's cool.
And this is another one where we were doing a reflection. This was down at Little Corona Del Mar Beach in the Orange County area.
How fun. Now we're going to have people, yes, you can do this at home. You can try this at home. This is wonderful.
And these particular lights, they're actually very inexpensive book reading lights that I bought at, I think, a Dollar Tree store, so they were $1 a piece. And they're white lights, but they come with different color housings. So this one was a blue light, and I put a piece of that blue painter's masking tape over the white, so it would be all, ended up kind of a purplish blue, but that way I could reduce that white. And then if you want to leave the white in, you can do that too and end up with...
So Jeff, have you written that up on one of your blog posts on your website of how to do this orb?
Now that one I haven't done yet. There's so many blog posts, so little time.
Yeah, okay. That would be a fun one. That would be a really fun one.
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks. Well, are we about ready to sum up what you would have to say to a photographer who's starting in night photography? What are some of the things that they should do? And please, would you share with us what workshops and ebooks you have about night photography so that our listeners can know how to reach you? And I know you're on Facebook because we were chatting on Facebook of how to get into the Google Plus Hangout.
Yep.
So,
well, I guess the key thing is that at night, the main illumination that you have on most nights is going to be the moon. And that changes every single night. You get a different amount of moonlight. So the key for night photography is not to ask someone what were your settings for that shot, except for the dark sky shot. And that I told you, I use 30 seconds, f2.8, ISO 6400. Not everyone can do that, so you may need to extend the exposure until it gets to be a good exposure for you. But other than that, on the other nights when there's a little bit of moon, which is almost every night, you would really have to hunt for the right exposure. So the key thing to learn on your camera is automatic exposure bracketing. And that's where you take a guesstimate on the exposure. So you might guess, say, ISO 3200 f4, start there, take a picture, but then have your camera set up so that it takes a stop lighter and a stop darker, and then you can see which one worked out best. And if none of those worked out well, if they're too dark, you make it more sensitive or up the ISO, you know, or open the aperture or use more time. Those are your three parameters that you can change.
well,
And so really, that becomes your key skill, is to determine the exposure. Once you determine the exposure, you're in pretty good shape until the moon sets or something else changes. And then once you have the basic exposure for the environment, then you can start playing around with lighting up. You know, you might have an old car or an old building. You can light it up or put a light inside. There are lots of different things you can do with lights to make it more interesting. But you gotta start with hunting for that night's exposure for the ambient surroundings.
Well, this has just been wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeff Sullivan. And we will provide in our show notes all of the ways that you can connect and watch Jeff and what he does. But now, Jeff, do you have a workshop that's coming up soon, a night shop workshop?
I do. The next one is at Bodie State Historic Park. They let us in from 6 p.m. till 1 a.m. So we get golden hour, sunset, blue hour, some twilight time where the moon's going to set. This particular time we'll have a 4% crescent moon, and that'll set around 9 o'clock. And then around 9:30, a little bit after that, it'll be dark enough for star trail shots. And the Milky Way will be beautiful all night long till 1 o'clock, from about 9:30 or 10 till 1. So we'll be just going crazy doing light painting and Milky Way and star trails and time-lapse and
So,
Awesome.
so
yeah,
Jeff,
it'll be fun.
how is it they can find out about that information?
The main way is through a page off the front of my blog, and my blog is very simple. It's jeffsullivanphotography.com/blog. And at the moment, my website at jeffsullivanphotography.com is under development, so if you go there, you get rerouted to the blog anyway.
Okay.
And
All
then
right,
at
so
the top,
for our listeners, we will have that on the show notes so you can get all the additional information. And I will
Yep.
keep bugging him till he tells us how to do the orb.
Yep. And then after that, I will have more Bodie workshops. I have 2 more nights and then a day with interior access to the old buildings. And then I will also have 2 fall colors workshops in the Eastern Sierra. I'll have one in Yosemite and then one in Death Valley. And the one in Death Valley will be while hopefully Comet Ison is in the sky. And we'll also have full moon rises and sets. So the one in Death Valley
Wow.
should be very, very active with the kind of twilight and evening photography.
Very cool.
Well, what an inspiration. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
When
Now
is
we-
the one in Yosemite?
The one in
Margaret's ready for a
Yosemite
trip.
is,
Yeah.
oh, that's going to be a great one. last year, I'll just start. I'll back up a little bit and start and say last year I went to the Moonbows, to the Horsetail Falls. I was there in the spring when the waterfalls were going. We did moonrises, moonsets, wildflowers. We did everything. But the one that ended up being my favorite was a complete surprise. We went down there just for a moonrise, but it was in November. So it was in late November, like 3 weeks into November, we thought the fall colors would basically be over. And they were a little bit past peak, but all the leaves were falling out of the trees. And so here we got a great moonrise. Then we had full moon night shooting, which was a blast. But then the leaves were flowing down the river while we were shooting at night and made stripes in our pictures. And it ended up being really, really cool. So we've intentionally picked that as our favorite and main Yosemite weekend this year. We're going to go back and do the same thing. Get the moon rising from behind Half Dome. This will be a week earlier, so there should be even more fall colors still up. But we should also get them flowing down the river and have just wonderful moonlit night shots. And when the full moon's out, the exposure will be more like maybe ISO 1600 or 1250, 30 seconds, probably f4, something like that. There's quite a bit of light with these full moons. So you don't need the most expensive camera or lens to go out and enjoy it. So that's another nice thing.
Do you still have room for an old lady on that trip?
I sure do, and we get rave reviews for people, you know, who come out and want plenty of attention. So, and our workshops, you know, usually we don't have more than 8 people. Sometimes we have fewer, so we can probably give you quite a bit of attention, and I think you'd have a lot of fun.
That sounds. Count me in. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Awesome.
That sounds good.
All right.
I think you'll like it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for starting off our night shooting series. So for all of our listeners, we will be having different guest photographers that are coming at different times, and we just had a confirmation from Michael Shaneblum, who should be showing up with us on the 30th at 7 p.m. and will be sharing his link. He has a night shot that went viral. 5,127 pluses and 1,494 shares. So you're going to want to come in on this series and see all this fun stuff and meet all these great photographers. And so now we're at the time of our show when we share photographers to watch. And is there anybody who's ready?
Cara, before we do that, I have a real quick thing for Howard Hoffman, who was asking about how do you find the Milky Way.
Okay.
And I'm going to do an old-fashioned screen share. This is called Sky Safari. And let me hit the button. Okay. And this shows Sky Safari can actually show the Milky Way as it rises, assuming that I hit the button right.
It was going, yeah.
Was it? Okay. And it's by Southern Stars. Highly recommended. And so this will show you what direction to look and what time of the evening to get it in your shot. So Sky Safari by Southern Stars.
And I think Google Earth might help too, don't you?
I have no idea if it does the Milky Way.
I don't know.
So, okay. All right. Is anybody up and ready, or shall I go first?
I can be.
Okay. Kevin. Kevin's ready. All right.
Okay, so since we're doing night photography, this is another. You know, I like to favor my Utah friends sometimes. So this is someone, again, from Utah that I don't personally know, but Casey Grimley. And he is getting started into the night photography. So here's a nice shot of the Milky Way, and then he did a little bit of light painting onto the car. And then another one that he has. So he's got quite a few, so someone I'd recommend checking out.
Great.
And hopefully he's watching the show because I'm sure he could have learned some great things from Jeff tonight.
Wonderful, wonderful. Margaret, are you ready?
Yes, I've got one here.
Okay.
Guys. This is Thomas Kast. That's K-A-S-T. He's a photographer on Google Plus, and I love this one with the northern lights and sort of the frozen tundra here. He has less than 1,000 followers, so not many people know about him, but he's an exceptional photographer, and this is just one of his photographs. So he's definitely someone that you can watch, and I think you'll enjoy.
Thank you, Margaret.
Beautiful.
So I'm going to go right here to the screen share, and I'll bring up Britta Rogi, and she is from Berlin, Germany, and she curates Show Your Best Work, Colors on Friday, and Photo Amateur. And this is one of her shots from Berlin. And so she brings her city into all of her work. She also shares with different points of view from landscape photography. So that's Britta Rogi.
Great.
Now we'll go to Jim.
Okay, so my recommended photographer is Jack. I'm probably going to mess the name up, but Jack Stepanian.
Yeah.
And he's an amateur photographer based in North Las Vegas. So this is Nevada night, I think. And he
we
likes
have good dark skies here.
Yeah, yeah. And, well, so he does landscapes and seascapes and a lot of other styles, macros, abstracts, experimentals. He's real interactive, highly engaging on Google+. And he curates for the Best Top Photographer and Photomania on G+. And so let me show you a little bit of his work. Oddly, I picked a Nightscape. I don't know why I did that, but so there's one of his shots, recent one, and just to show you, again, he's pretty diverse.
I didn't realize he was in Nevada.
Yes. And so that's Jack Stepanian, and I hope you'll check him out and maybe give him a follow.
I saw him talking to Margaret there.
Yeah. He's good. He's good.
And you'll give us a link in the notes, will you?
Yep.
Yes, in our show notes we'll have all of these, and you will be in the circle now. All of our guests are in the circle, and then all of the photographers that we feature are in this special landscape photography show circle. So you'll be in there.
Hooray. Good.
Now, Jeff, you will come back and join us, won't you?
Sure. Actually, I thought you guys were going to all come to the Yosemite workshop.
Hey,
We can do one live.
I think this needs to be a team event. You said you had room for 8 people. Well, we've got a good group right here.
Well, I think I misspoke because at Bodie they give us up to 10 on the first group, but then you get an extra monitor. You can go to 20. You get another monitor. You can go to 30. So yeah, bring all your friends.
That's great.
Well, everybody knows that Yosemite is just really up there on, it's like the bucket list of bucket list.
Oh, yeah.
And I've never seen it. I just drool over everybody's pictures.
It's the most popular park in the western U.S. It's right behind Great Smoky Mountain National Park for visitors, and that one I think gets it because there's so many population centers nearby. But Yosemite is just spectacular.
Well, I think it's got so many just iconic places. It's not just one thing. There's 10 of them. I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah, it really
I'm going to
does.
go.
It's
So
amazing.
Jeff, tell us about your recommended photographer.
Let me offer you my partner in crime, Lori Hibbett, because she
Yes.
wanted to be here, but just turning on her computer crashed my internet as far as being on a Hangout. So we have to multiplex here and be here one at a time. So let me bring up some of her work. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
This is
And
a
just a footnote. She has been so busy. At some point, we hope she's on one of our shows.
I'm sure she'd love that, but yeah, she's.
Yeah.
I'm keeping her busy, and so is her other job. She's a guardian for elderly people, and also volunteers for an advocate for elders nonprofit. And then she's also lately been helping law enforcement catch people that are abusing elders and doing
Oh
the
boy.
financial analysis. So she has
Oh,
three
that's
jobs.
awesome.
Wow.
Three jobs on top of helping me lead workshops, and so yeah, I'm lucky that I can get her time and that she loves being out at night so much. So this is from Bodie. This is taken literally from where we park our car, and they have one of the head frames that they would use to mount a big wheel and then drop the ore buckets and the people down into the vertical shafts, and that's one of the big wheels right there that the cable would go over. And that's of course, the Milky Way facing the other way towards the center of the galaxy. And that part of the Milky Way typically is to the southeast right after sunset in June. Kind of starts moving a little bit to the south as you get into July and August. And during the night, it'll move from southeast to southwest, and it'll move across the southern sky. So the general way to look for the Milky Way is to look generally southward and just look for this stripe of white light, south or southeast, somewhere around there. And if you can't see it, you might not be able to photograph it, but if you see it, you should be able to capture it. And I'll just flip through a couple more pictures here from Lori. And this one had a bright moon, so we were just lucky that we could still pick up the Milky Way as well.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And this one too, I think it was about a 25 or 30% moon, which is enough that you already start seeing the sky as a little bit blue. And these are just a couple more Bodhi pictures. I think she has some more night ones here. I have to get her to do a night photography album.
Did you just get back from Alaska, or did she just get back from Alaska?
No, I haven't been to Alaska yet, and she hasn't been there in a while.
Oh. That's the look, Margaret, I think you were talking about that we'd seen around the church or around the building.
Yes, the one where is like the giant circle.
Yes.
Gorgeous shots.
Well, those are great. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep, we get out every chance we get.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we're going to sign off for episode 14 and join us for episode 16 with Michael Somgaard. And so thank you for being with us. Thank you, Jeff, for being with us. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.